Ben, you mentioned before that you think the returns process for many retailers is a broken model. Can we dive a little bit more into why you say this and why you think that right now reCommerce is becoming very important to retailers into how that to fix that broken model? Why don't we dig in a little deeper into that?
Sure. So let me take that in reverse order. So reCommerce is fundamentally about product lifecycle extension. Okay, it's about making sure that the purpose for which an item was made, it's actually used for, and it doesn't matter whether it's the first buyer, the second buyer, third buyer, or fourth buyer. It is inherently sustainable. To engage in reCommerce, is one of four key pillars. There's reuse, recycle, reuse, and resell. So I think that any retailer that that consciously adopts a process which involves reCommerce inherently becomes more sustainable. And actually, there's no the thing that frustrates me is there's no reason not to do this. This is it makes money financially for retailers to do this, to get involved in reCommerce rather than not. So to me that makes a ton of sense. And why do I think returns are broken? Well, the return process is broken. Well, if you think about how it's evolved, problem inventory in a business has always been treated as a cost of doing business, right? If I'm a manufacturer, as long as I sell enough of a particular SKU, there's always been a bit left in the warehouse, and this is how the liquidators, or what we know as jobbers and stock lot traders in Europe, this is why they've been there. They've been the guys that have been we'll sort the problem out in the warehouse. It's what I call an over-the-shoulder problem. It's rear view mirror. You're a retailer, you look forward, you don't really think too much about what's going on in the warehouse with the returns. We talked earlier on about the pandemic, emphasizing or highlighting the strains in businesses' reverse logistics process. Well, how did that manifest itself? Well, that pile in the warehouse got bigger, right? Is the short and simple version. And at the same time, competition online meant that margins were getting crushed. So retailers are making less money up front, got a bigger problem in the background. So how do they fix it? And it's always been fixed with liquidators, jobbers. That's been the first port of call, because retailers accepted it as a cost of doing business. As technology has evolved, it's been easier and easier and easier for a retailer in one country to sell to another. It's not difficult. There are big marketplaces that enable this, that actively encourage customers to move, or retailers to move inventory from one location to another, because it's going to give a better customer experience. That selling from one country to another is not difficult. Bringing it back to process it is a whole different ballgame. And the service providers that are out there. So if you think about a pure play online retailer, they've always used a 3PL, 4PL network. It's part of the, it's part of the playbook. That's we're going to operate a lean and mean. We'll outsource. We'll put our inventory there. We're never actually going to see it. We're going to pay somebody else to handle it. When you encourage logistics companies, and when you encourage return technology businesses who are incentivized, they make their money by handling and moving things around. There's no incentive for these businesses to actually do anything other than least amount of work for the highest amount of margin, right? And that typically means in the logistics business, keeping stuff moving around. If I'm touching it, if I'm handling it, if I'm storing it, I'm getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm the retailer and I'm in a different country and this stuff's just piling up, well, okay. I mean, you hear 3PL say, well, we don't make money out of storage, and generally that's true, right? But they've probably made money out of the label and the handling and the stuff that's come in and out. And it's evolved because nobody really has businesses hadn't really spent the time to invest in people and systems. So they bought the technology that was out there, but that technology encouraged these items to be moved around and kept in flight, And that to me is it's not wrong, it's just how the system has evolved. It's when the technology came out that enabled people to receive QR codes and barcodes, for returns on their phone, and then marvelous, great, go drop it off at a locker system, or drop it off at your local Pudo, or whatever you're going to do, however you're going to return it. The technology out there was enabled to make that happen because it was convenient. But these guys get paid by having these items moving around, and sometimes things are being moved around now when they don't need to be. And I think there's a lot of this is legacy, and again, a lot of it is because retailers, again, looking forward, not backwards. So that's why I think it's broken. I think the whole technology piece around returns will be the next battleground in terms of e-com technology. It's there's so much inbuilt latency in that process. It's ripe for it's ripe for improvement. I think there's emerging technology already coming out, and I think that the incumbents that have adopted the old model of, hey, look, we'll handle it, we'll provide you a return DC, we'll consolidate it and fly it all back for you, that I think is just an outdated way of thinking, and I think that will be superseded over time.
So what are the trends that you see that that you foresee are going to get traction? Because I mean, our return processes have been built around expediency and customer expediency, and getting the customer to return the process or the product. In some industries, like in apparel, as we talked about, I mean, the return rate is over 50%. In some industries, it's very, very low. But I'm just wondering what are the types of business models that we're going to see going forward, that some being driven obviously by legislation, but others, where there is none. How does one make this economically viable?
So I think there's be careful around the economically viable phrase here, right? I think that there's a the other phrase that always makes me smile is, I'm going to make money out of returns, and I'm like, maybe the right thought process here is actually to understand this concept of a net recovery rate. And what do I mean by a net recovery rate? Well, if you think about there's two sides to what happens to a return. Firstly, you need to understand whether you can resell it or not, and who's going to buy it and what are they going to pay for it. And that's where I see that there'll be technology evolving around that, particularly around understanding grading. Another topic of mine, we can have a talk about that later if we want to. But unless you understand the condition of the item when it's being returned, how do you know what the next best step is for it? And then technology, I think, will evolve around that. I think that that standardized grading will become more and more and more relevant, because trust online is incredibly important, right? And if you're relying on somebody else's description of a product item, then if you're happy to buy something which has been slightly used, or if it's if the condition description isn't accurate, or people don't understand what they're buying, what does that mean? But you're back to the I'm onto the reviews and don't buy off these guys again, right? They said it was they said it was slightly blemished. They never said there was a hole across the back. So I would see technology evolving in that area, and again, that's just a little plug for us. That that's one of the things that we do. Where else do I see it evolving? I think that data starts to play a part now, because in understanding the condition of an item, the next thing you need to understand is, where am I going to sell it and when? Because without understanding the resale value of the item, you then can't align the right logistics process behind that. So I would look around grading, and I would look around understanding the resale value of the items, and then the likelihood of those items being sold. Because once you understand that, then you can actually start to align a process behind it that says, well, actually, I don't want that item to go there. I want it to go here. And I've talked earlier on about net recovery rate. Net recovery rate is two things. Once you understand how much the item is worth on the secondary market, whether that's as a B2C sale or as a B2B sale, not much more you can do to affect that part of the equation. Where you then can start to win is understanding that below the line, there's a whole set of costs, right? And that you can impact the net recovery rate by not spending money on certain items and having processes that you don't need to. Because why spend $1 on processing something if you're not going to make it back? If you can save $1 by not doing something, by making your logistics process aligned because you've got the right data, and you understand what you're going to do with that item. If you've got those two things measured up, then you're starting to optimize your process. So, well, you can't necessarily make money out of returns. You can spend less, and I don't know a retailer that's not interested in reducing the cost of their returns. So, so I would see primarily technology around understanding condition and resale value, and then the logistics process aligning behind that. Rather than it being, I don't think it'll affect what the customers themselves do with it. I think they've still got to inject that product into a system somewhere. That I don't see. That process is almost baked in. But I think it's what happens once it gets in the system. I think the other thing that's going to be really interesting, and if we revisit this in the year of interbeing, I will bet you that there's providers out there that are looking at how quickly refunds can be provided to customers safely. So if I was going to pick something, that's what I would say. I would be looking at resale values, refunds, and grading and conditioning. And if you've got those three things now, then everything else I think falls in behind it. And if you're doing it in market, then inherently it becomes sustainable because you're not moving things around as much, which to us as a business is actually quite important. We get that everybody wants to make money, but if we can help businesses not move goods around as much, then that means that they're not, we're lowering the carbon cost of the return, put it like that.
Yeah. It's interesting what you say about can I resell the grading, because I think that's a really interesting point. I wonder whether what we see in the electronics world with refurbished, and I think Apple are probably one of the best at this, is that a model that could be evolved to other areas? I mean, in terms of electronics, it's fairly straightforward. I mean, you can grade a case, whether it's all scratched up, whether the screen's broken.
Wow.
So
it's in my previous role, the business was very involved in cell phones, and what I took from that industry was that you've got, I mean, mobile is, cell phones are a commodity product nearly, but even the Mobile Phone Association tried to introduce a standardized grading process to make that everybody knew, what a grade A iPhone looked like and what a grade B Samsung looked like, and it defined the size of the scratches and the depth of the scratches. But getting people to adopt that is really quite difficult, So yes, in theory, but in practice, pretty difficult. And I think that's it. The cell phone industry is slightly peculiar, so probably not the best example to take. But if you go into the consumer electronics industry, do I think that there will come a time where retailers and brands and OEMs actually sell their products and actually sell a grading structure that goes with it and says, if you want to be our resale partner for these products, this is how we expect you to grade it? Because ultimately, if I buy a second-hand Dyson Hoover, again, not calling Dyson out, just using an example, it doesn't matter where I bought it from. If it breaks down, it's in the garage. It's a broken Dyson, right? I don't care whether I bought it from eBay or Walmart or wherever. I'm experiencing that brand, and I think that you will see brands start to push out specs around how they expect their products to be graded, and hope, and maybe start to enforce the partners that they work with reads and say, look, you've got to have the facilities to do this because we want to be more sustainable, but we want our customers, who are the end users of this product, to be guaranteed the experience that we're setting the expectation. So do it. I absolutely think that's going to happen.
Interesting. I think the other thing that you touched on was how quickly can a refund be paid out, and I think there's some really interesting trends going on in the Shopify world of plugins that expedite the refund process.
Yeah. It's definitely an area to watch. There's a trust gap that I've heard it referred to. If I'm going to give you your money, are you going to promise to put this refund in this item back in the post? And again, and I think that we're in the very early days of that. I've seen versions of it that have used that have used processes. I guess they're trying to make they're trying to make a round peg fit in a square hole, right? The process works, but it's a little bit convoluted. I think that you will see the payment gateways and the merchant service providers, once they realise the opportunity, I think you will see them coming forward with all sorts of processes to actually expedite that. Because why? We're right back to this customer experience thing again, right? If I'm confident that I believe you as a brand online, and I like the look of the product, and you're actually up there saying, hey, look, if you buy it, if you don't want it, we'll refund you like that, provided that you fit certain criteria. Then you can absolutely see why that would be popular. It would drive trust, it could drive conversion rates, but equally, you've got to have the reverse logistics process to align with that, which again is the current systems just don't do that at the moment. And again, that's why I think you will see the logistics and the old tech providers, if you like, who have created the process now. I think they're going to have to fall in line like everybody else, because I think that decision about what happens with that item is going to be made before they ever get to touch it.